Hey Toy fans, welcome back to another week of Project Geek Week, your friendly neighborhood geek news talk show. With me this week, I've got Greg.
Hey there.
And we got a special guest this week, Jeff.
How's it going?
So Jeff we've actually known for quite a while. Since Greg and I were really in middle school, pretty much we've known Jeff, if not earlier. Yeah. So it's the first time he's doing the show with us, but we've known this guy a long time, and I promise you his geek cred is second to none. So let's go ahead and get with the news for this week's show. We want to talk first about Jurassic World. Now, I don't think any of us have seen the movie yet.
Nope.
But it's definitely noteworthy how well it did. I mean, it opened up at $208.8 million. I think that's what the last ranking was from Box Office Mojo.
Probably higher now.
My goodness, guys, for opening weekend, I didn't think Avengers was going to get beat for quite some time. Maybe with Star Wars this December, but Jurassic World, what do you think it is about this movie that made people rush out to see it?
Apparently people were really eager to see another Jurassic movie. Like, I think the studio's probably going to be just as surprised.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They knew it would be successful, but they didn't know it would be $208 million on opening weekends.
Right? I mean, I had people talking about it at work. You know, people just passively interested in it. I mean, I was looking forward to it, but I wasn't like super energized to see it like I was with Avengers, but really surprised me. I mean, Jeff, are you planning on seeing the movie? Or?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest part for me is when they basically marketed it as a direct sequel to the old one and kind of said, you know, hey, we're not really going to worry about 2 and 3. I think that kind of gave it a lot of credibility because a lot of people didn't like those movies.
Made it easier to go see it.
Yeah. And then Chris Pratt after Guardians, I mean, that
definitely can't be denied.
That was a huge selling point, so yeah.
Yep. So that was actually probably some pretty good casting on the part of Universal to get him in the movie. So
I wonder if they had anyone else considered, or if they're just like, no, we want Chris Pratt.
You know what? Yeah. I mean, it almost seems like based on the trailer, the role was sort of like tailor-made for him. Mm-hmm. So
I actually was listening to an interview with him the other day, and they rewrote parts of the movie once they found out that they got him.
Oh, really?
They actually did tailor the script to him, so he could be, not necessarily could be goofy, but so he could kind of be himself a little more.
Sure.
Apparently, it was a lot more uptight character until they got Chris Pratt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I've heard, and I don't know how much we want to say on this since we haven't seen the movie, but I've heard that there's one actor who came back from the first movie.
I've heard that
one of the
too.
scientists.
Yes, Dr. Wynn. That I've heard.
Yes.
Or is it Wynn or who?
I don't know.
Okay. Or Wu, I think.
It's
maybe.
Wu.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Wu.
Yeah.
Okay. I know, and this is just an aside, if you buy the Lego Jurassic World video game from Target, the exclusive figure you get at Target is the Dr. Wu Lego minifigure.
Okay.
So there you go. All right, so yeah, very much surprised by that movie. Unfortunately, none of us have had a chance to see it. We're definitely probably going to check it out, but certainly noteworthy that this film crushed Avengers and nobody saw it coming. So,
yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the next bit of news here we have here. We've got 2 bits of news on the Gambit movie. Via Entertainment Weekly, we've learned that Rupert Wyatt, director of Rise of Planet of the Apes, is going to be directing the Gambit movie. Now, I've seen, I think Rise is the first one or the second one? Dawn is the first one, right?
Rise is the second one.
Rise is the second one. Okay, so I haven't seen the second one yet. That just came out last summer. A big financial success for Fox. But have you seen Rise of the Planet of the Apes?
Bits and pieces of it. Haven't actually sat and watched the whole thing. What I saw of it, I enjoyed.
Okay.
For what it's worth, it was.
So I'm not sure what to expect from his style then, but he certainly has a very noteworthy film under his belt. He can certainly handle special effects budget, and I think a large cast if Gambit's going to even need that. So I'm certainly not unenthused by his involvement in the movie.
Do you know what, or do you have speculation the Gambit movie is going to be about?
We don't know at this point. We don't even know what year it's set in.
Is Anna Paquin going to be in it?
No.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been said one way or another.
Presumably they'll recast Rogue if they wanted to use her.
I almost feel like Rogue may not even be in the movie, but I guess we'll see what happens. I mean,
I just don't think if they did have Rogue, it would be Anna Paquin.
No,
it's a bit late for that.
Yeah. So, again, though, it depends on when the movie's taking place. Mm-hmm. If the movie takes place in the present, why not use Anna Paquin?
Well, especially having Channing Tatum. I mean, he's not going to be playing a young Gambit. I mean, it's not going to be like old man Logan thing here, but
right.
I mean, he's not exactly a kid, so
yeah. Certainly not as young as the Spider-Man.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, then Channing Tatum actually said on a Reddit, Ask Me Anything, that he will not be appearing in X-Men Apocalypse. So presumably on Reddit, Ask Me Anything, there's the honor system at play that you're telling the truth, right? So do you think this is a red herring, or do you think he really isn't in the movie? And
I don't think he would have said that if you were in the movie. I think he would have been more obtuse about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree. Yeah.
So
I don't think we'll see him.
We had been kind of predicting maybe that there's a chance that Gambit could show up as a Horseman of Apocalypse since he had been in the comics, but it seems like at this point we won't even get a tease of him, right? It's so that also makes me wonder too then about the timeline of Gambit. Maybe they're going to have it set in the present day and they're not having him in Apocalypse, so they don't have to explain how he came from the 1980s.
Yeah.
So
you think they're just going to ignore X-Men Origins Wolverine Gambit? Just pretend that doesn't exist?
I guess so. I mean, he has the same name, right? So, I mean, the way the movies have been structured, that movie's still in continuity with what's going on.
Until they smash it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so I guess we'll see where they go with that. So we'll see if they even mention his real name or if they just call him Gambit. Because do they call him Gambit in X-Men Origins Wolverine? I can't remember. Or is it just Remy?
As far as I know, it's just Remy.
Yeah. So, well, I guess we'll see how they play that one out then. And moving on to Marvel casting, we also have Jon Bernthal, famous for The Walking Dead, and he even was on Mob City recently. He's been cast as Frank Castle the Punisher in Netflix Daredevil Season 2. Personally, I love that Punisher is going to be in Daredevil Season 2. I'm not a huge fan of Jon Bernthal.
I'm kind of in the same boat. It's hard to sympathize with, and I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but if you haven't seen The Walking Dead, it's hard to sympathize with Shane.
Yeah.
But I also am not a huge fan of Bernthal's portrayal. But that said, this is going to be a completely different character.
True.
I hope it's, at least for me, kind of a clean slate on the actor, and we can see him in a new context. Also, I don't know how Punisher is going to fit into the story that we have on Daredevil so far.
Okay.
Well,
first, I guess, before we get into that even, Jeff, what do you think of the casting?
I mean, my only familiarity with him is Walking Dead. It's kind of the same thing. I don't really... I think it's really going to depend on how they do it. If they try and fit in the whole Punisher backstory, I think at first I'm going to have a hard time kind of sympathizing with him until all the events happen.
Right.
If they kind of make that assumed knowledge and he comes in already having all that happened as more kind of like the vigilante character,
sure,
I could see that working because then he's going to be a little darker and
sure,
you may not necessarily, you're not supposed to completely like him. So
so then to kind of answer your question, Greg, I think that they're going to drop us into Punisher already in the middle of what he's doing. Mm-hmm. I think Daredevil's going to be on another trail of a mob boss, and it's going to be somebody that Punisher is already trying to track down. So
it'll be kind of like how they introduced Stick, where he's doing his own thing.
Exactly. And I almost think that Daredevil's going to get in the way of what Punisher's doing, and they're going to be antagonists. Probably, if I had to guess, their first encounter for sure, but maybe even most of the season, they're going to be antagonists.
Yeah.
And Punisher kills. Daredevil... I don't think he actually killed anybody on purpose.
He certainly tried not to.
Yeah.
The closest was Nobu, where it's kind of iffy because
Right.
Yeah, well, and he throws that. I mean, it's just minor henchling, but the Russian guy tosses him off the roof, and he kind of has to wait for a second and listen to see if he's still alive.
That's true.
He ends up in a coma, but he doesn't die. Yeah.
So that'll certainly be something that I think plays into it. But I think, this Punisher will probably be somebody who's already, grizzled Frank Castle, already lost his family. So I guess we'll see how this goes. Personally, of the Punishers we've had so far, Dolph Lundgren in the 80s and Thomas Jane in the mid-2000s and even Ray Stevenson in the late 2000s, my favorite so far has been Tom Jane. And I love when he did that Dirty Laundry skit or short film that was also up you can find it on YouTube. But I think he was a really good Punisher, and I'm kind of sorry to see that he's not coming back for this role, but I understand Marvel trying to clean the slate and do somebody brand new. I also think it's interesting that they picked Jon Bernthal. If you guys are familiar with the artwork of Ariel Olivetti, and I don't know if Ariel's a male or female, I'm going to assume it's a male, he did artwork for Punisher during Civil War, and he had these sort of painted style to his artwork. But anyway, the way that he renders Punisher, which actually... now that I say that, I do remember what Ariel looks like, and he made himself the Punisher, I think, look kind of like him. But at the same time, I feel like when they were casting for Punisher, they looked up comic book covers. If you look at images of Ariel Olivetti's version of Punisher, it does have a passing resemblance to Jon Bernthal. So it's almost like they looked at the artwork and said, what actor can we find that looks like this?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of funny.
I do think if there isn't another 2-minute single camera shot, just epic fight scene between the two of them at some point during the season, that's a huge missed opportunity. Even if it's not the first time they meet, even if I could see it get to the point where they're kind of not buddy, but they're almost working together throughout the point, and they get to where they're capturing whoever they're going after. Punisher wants to kill him, Daredevil wants to turn him in, and then we get this epic fight.
That would be amazing.
At the end of the season, I think that would be
really great. All right, well then, so there's our thoughts on that, guys. We also had some other casting from Marvel movies in this case. Chiwetel Ejiofor from 12 Years a Slave or Serenity, he has been cast as Baron Mordo. Now, if you're not familiar with Baron Mordo, he is traditionally the arch nemesis of Doctor Strange, and he's traditionally a white Transylvanian sorcerer and a nobleman from the country that he hails from. So it's interesting to see that they are definitely changing up the expectation with Baron Mordo. I guess first let's talk about Chiwetel Ejiofor, and I'm sorry to say I've not seen 12 Years a Slave and I've not seen Serenity, so I don't really know what this actor is going to bring to the table.
I've seen Serenity, but I don't know who he played in that movie.
He was apparently the villain in Serenity.
He was the believer. I mean, without seeing the movie, it's kind of hard to explain it, but he's a good guy. Well, he thinks he's a good guy that does bad things to create a better world, and he knows he doesn't belong in this better world, but he'll do anything that he thinks, whether it's killing children, killing preachers, he doesn't care.
Okay.
Whatever. So, I could definitely see him playing this character well. It could definitely still be a Baron. I mean, he has that really kind of airy, like lofty, I'm better than you feel to him.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I could definitely see this working really well. He was amazing in Serenity. I'm very excited to see him in this.
Okay. Now, it just should be noted, because everyone else is talking about it, that they did kind of subvert expectations and pick somebody who doesn't necessarily seem like he's coming from Transylvania. And the only reason I mention that is we're going to see with the next casting news, Tilda Swinton has been cast as the Ancient One. Now, if you read the comics, the Ancient One is the teacher that taught Baron Mordo and Doctor Strange how to use their abilities. And he's traditionally been this sort of very... well, I guess traditional is the word. Traditional, ancient Asian sort of Grand Master type of character. But now they have Tilda Swinton. She's, I don't know, she's from the Northern European nations, playing this sort of older character. And they changed the gender in this case, too. I want to point out first that I think it's interesting that Marvel seems to be trying to add diversity to their cast. And I also think that it's interesting that they're getting very... is lauded the right word? Very lauded actors for the parts of these characters. So... certainly, I guess, there was a lot of criticism aimed at the first Avengers film for not being diverse enough, and I think it's interesting that they're going this direction and just trying to make sure that there's talent first, I guess, with what they're doing for the casting for
Do you think they'll have Tilda Swinton be a clear female, or it'll be more androgynous, and it's like sort of this entity?
I don't know what to expect from the Ancient One at this point. I'm going to assume that they're not, maybe they won't even really address it, that she'll just be the Grand Master and that's how they'll play it off. I don't know. I know that, and I don't know a lot of her work, but I know a lot of people have said that she's played androgynous roles before. So I guess maybe if you've seen something like that, you can speak on that.
I have not.
Okay.
The only thing I can remember seeing her in was, I think she was the wife in Burn After Reading. I may have.
Oh man, was she really?
Yeah.
I believe so. And I think Narnia, I believe she was the White Witch.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and she was very... she's good looking girl. She's definitely very feminine, but yeah, I could see her definitely, depending on how they costume her, she could be more of like a deity type.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess another thing here, and this is just speaking to the comics, the way that they presented like the dress of the character and the look of where they trained and everything was almost like an old Tibetan temple. I wonder if they're going to change that completely with this movie. I guess they could keep it the same if they wanted to, but it's just interesting that since they're changing certain visual aesthetics of Doctor Strange's backstory, or at least the characters in his backstory, if we're going to get a whole sort of origin that's maybe updated for the modern age, and maybe it's not the same sort of like old man on the mountain sort of backstory. So I find that kind of interesting. So again, I think they got some very talented actors for this, if you guys agree with that. So it's very interesting to see, like, if we haven't had a casting yet for Wong, Doctor Strange's manservant. Well, not manservant. I mean, he kind of started that way, and now he's kind of more of a partner of him in the comics. But if we even get that character in this movie, I'm kind of curious to see where they go with that direction. So, all right. So moving on from casting, then let's go ahead and talk about the only comic book that we're reviewing this week is Secret Wars Years of Future Past #1. And Greg, why don't you go ahead? First of all, I want to mention that if you aren't familiar with Days of Future Past, in our previous show, we actually talked about both the comic, the episode of the X-Men animated series, and the movie X-Men Days of Future Past. So you can get a little bit of history in that episode. But Greg, why don't you tell us, I guess, what this comic was about?
Okay, so basically they've decided to set a whole storyline, I guess, in the sort of dystopian post-apocalyptic future that was first depicted in was it Claremont's, I guess, Days of Future Past. And there are a lot of references to the old book. I'm glad that I read the old book before we got to this one, because otherwise they would have just gone right over my head. So basically we've learned now that Colossus and Shadowcat have a daughter named Christina or Chrissy, and at least at the beginning of the book she doesn't have powers yet. But they're also all wearing these collars that keep them from using powers. So basically, the intro starts in a very similar way to the old books, where and you don't know at this point that it's not Kitty Pryde, so they kind of mess with your expectations a little bit there. But she's kind of wandering around in this Sentinel-infested future, and then she gets attacked, and Wolverine has to save her, just like in the original book. But then they go back to the base, where you see Kitty Pryde and Colossus, and it becomes clear, oh, this is a new character that is related to these other people. And they devise their plan to remove the collars, which they do, and then they get attacked by Sentinels, And I guess one of the big cathartic moments in the book is when Chrissy's power emerges, and we learn that she's, the way I described it earlier was like a Reed Richards with Colossus's power, or like Jeff said, a T-1000.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, that happens. We also get the introduction of a new son for Wolverine.
Oh yeah.
And it's not Dakin.
Yeah.
It's some other guy. And we don't know a whole lot about him. He seems to have some sort of phasing ability.
Which is curious considering who the cast of the book includes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
it's like you can't miss that. Like you've got Kitty Pryde and apparently her daughter. And then you have some other character that does the phasing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit strange. In the first issue, we saw what seems to be the death of the Blob. We did not see Avalanche, Destiny, or Pyro, the traditional other villains in the story. We did see Mystique. And we also saw Kelly a little bit. Am I forgetting anything? Basically, the book ends after the battle with Blob and Mystique. Blob is ostensibly dead. And I'm trying to remember what the big cliffhanger was. It's escaping me right now, but...
Oh, I can't remember either.
I mean,
it's a panel of Shadowcat, but
it's basically they're just off to do. Shadowcat's off to save the president.
Oh,
they
that's
just
right.
kinda-
The new
they just kinda
Sentinel
leave it
shows
at
up.
that. Yeah, the new
Yeah, the
Sentinel.
new
that's
Sentinel
right.
shows
Yeah,
up.
the Doom
Yeah.
shows up. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Jeff, then, as somebody who hasn't read the original comic, kind of what's your take on the way the story played out?
It was. I mean, really, like I said, my only exposure to this was this book, and then it's been a long time since I've seen it, but the old '90s cartoon.
Sure.
Really, the only thing that I think I would touch on that I'm still kind of worried when Blob comes out. He's definitely they've been waking up since after 15 years, but he doesn't look like, it's not just aging. I mean, there's obviously something wrong,
done with
like
him,
burned or veins sticking out. So I'm still wondering if it was maybe like a clone or something like that.
Okay.
Especially after he dies, just because it's not
red blood.
It's not red blood. It's like green goo, like some kind of science experiment between that and just the look of him.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder if there's something more going on there.
I'm hoping we get backstory on that too. I mean, one thing about this story is that they definitely drop you into a status quo that's not the same as what we had in the original comic. Sure. So I don't know how much time they're going to spend going backwards. I do think this is a limited series, and ultimately it's going to have to tie into the grander picture of Secret Wars at some point, we would think. So we even see hear mentions of Doom God. Mm-hmm. So definitely that's different from the original Days of Future Past.
You see him in the last panel too. He comes flying in with the new Sentinel.
Oh, I thought that was a Doom Sentinel.
Oh, okay, that's probably I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought Doom was leading him or something like that, but that does make sense.
Doom has a different look in Secret Wars. He's like all white now.
Okay,
and
definitely not him then.
So, all right, well then I also want to point on a couple of things. The first thing I want to mention is that the daughter, Chrissy Pryde, I guess is what her name is, I find her very visually and power set similar to Mercury from the new X-Men, the book that ran sort of the second iteration of the New Mutants that was in the mid-2000s with characters like Rockslide and Anil and Surge. So I'm just wondering if that was intentionally supposed to be visually similar, or if this was just a completely new character. I guess I should mention the creative team on this book. Marguerite Bennett actually wrote the book. She's done A-Force, and she's written some material for New 52. And then Mike Norton did the artwork, who has done Runaways and Gravity in the past. And I gotta say, I love the artwork on this book. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah.
But Marguerite is a relatively new name to comics, so I don't know that she's even read New X-Men. So it's an interesting coincidence, I think, if Chrissy is just a completely original creation. It makes sense with Colossus being her father that she would have a metal power of some sort.
Yeah, but the weird Stretcho thing didn't really connect for me. I'm not sure where that comes from.
Right. And that's similar to kind of how Mercury in the new X-Men moves. So I find that interesting. But overall, I enjoyed the book a lot more than I thought I would. I did like the opening with a Pride character needing to be saved by Wolverine.
Yep.
And really, it's kind of an intriguing story so far. So I'm curious to see where it goes. So
yeah, definitely enjoyed it as well.
All right, guys. Well, then we're going to move on to our E3 news. I mean, our gaming news for this week is going to be basically as much stuff as we can cover from E3, and I promise we're going to miss something, but we're going to try to hit on as much as we can. And Greg and Jeff, feel free to chime in with whatever you want to talk about. We're going to start with the Xbox highlights. So one of the bigger things they announced was that Xbox 360 games, backwards compatibility for those games is going to be introduced into the Xbox One. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I thought when the Xbox One was first announced, Microsoft said backwards compatibility was impossible for this system. It wasn't designed to work that way.
From what I remember, the hardware was there, but they just could not for the life of them figure out how to get the software.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, because from launch, the consoles they said, I mean, the disk drive, the laser's able to read it.
Okay.
They just couldn't figure out. The main thing they wanted to do is they wanted to be able to cross-platform play. So if you're on your Xbox One putting in a 360 game, they wanted you to be able to play with someone on an Xbox 360, which now they're going to be able to do, but apparently it took them
Okay,
couple
that's
years to figure
interesting.
it
So
out.
it wasn't a case of like PlayStation going PS2 to PS3 where they just took the Emotion engine out of the PlayStation hardware. Well, I guess it was in there at launch, right? Or an emulator for it was in there at launch, but they eventually took it out. So it is completely impossible for it to play PS2 games. Xbox always had the hardware needed to do that. They just didn't know how to implement it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think a big part of that too, the big outcry over people not wanting the console to be always online. There were a lot of cool features they were going to be able to do, and if I remember right, one of the features they were kind of milking with that is, whenever they wanted to add on these emulators to be able to add on new backwards compatible games, they could just do it right away instead of having to implement a whole console update and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But,
well, they did mention then, when talking about backwards compatibility, that not all Xbox 360 titles are going to be compatible. I'm guessing, and maybe you've heard differently, that this is a situation like with the Xbox One to the 360 where they had to do an individual firmware for each game.
Yeah.
So you can basically count on anything published by Microsoft Studios getting that firmware, if I had to guess. Anything that was a licensed title, any of your superhero games from Xbox 360, probably not going to work on this new platform because no team is going to be paid to create firmware for a game that nobody's making money off of anymore.
Exactly.
So they also said that any Kinect title will absolutely not work on the Xbox One. I guess it's just... I think it's just the way the Kinect sensor works. What is on the current Xbox is too advanced for what the software was trying to, or the game was trying to interpret on the previous generation.
Yeah, and honestly, other than what maybe Just Dance and Fruit Ninja, I mean, it wasn't a huge selling point. I mean, there was some fun stuff. I love Star Wars Kinect, but
so. All right, well then I also, and this is a big one for me anyway, Gears of War 4 was announced, and this is a sequel to Gears of War 3, not a sequel to the prequel Gears of War Judgment. So that's set to come out in 2016. I don't think we know a lot about the story right now. We don't even know if Dom's going to be in the game, which is kind of an interesting question after 3. Yeah. So, so that's basically all the news I had on Xbox 360. Did you want to add anything to that?
I have not played Gears of War except for with you, so...
Okay.
Gotcha. No, I mean, as far as Xbox specific, yeah, that's...
Okay. Now, I know there was some Halo news out there, guys. I didn't keep up on all of that, and there's even news of a new controller that may be over $100.
$150.
$150. So that part you do know about.
Oh, yes.
So then why don't you go ahead and really quick just tell us about this controller that was announced.
Unfortunately, I mean, the big news about the controller has been the price point. I don't really know the feature set that well.
Okay.
So I would feel a little bit irresponsible talking about it.
No, that's fine. We'll go ahead and move on from that,
$150 is the big news point for that controller.
So hopefully it does more than just play games.
Yes.
All right. So moving on to the PlayStation highlights then. We finally saw The Last Guardian again. It's got a release date of next year. We saw what, to me, seemed like the exact same sort of gameplay demo we got way back in 2008 when the game was first announced. I don't know if you guys thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Just seemed like it was what we'd already seen before. So I'm personally not excited for Last Guardian yet, but maybe we'll get some more coming down the line that makes us, or at least me, or maybe you guys too.
I mean, I haven't played a Team Iuko game, so it's not like I'm going to rush out and buy this one.
Sure.
But, I mean, it's good to know the game isn't dead.
Right? Yeah, exactly, right?
Team Iuko fans that are really excited right now, I'm sure.
I mean, we'll ignore that studios like Naughty Dog and Insomniac could put out tons of Ratchet and Clanks and Uncharted's and Last of Us in the time it's taken to go from Shadow of the Colossus to The Last Guardian. But anyway... That just means it's more time in the oven. It's going to be better, right?
Yeah, right. Sure.
So,
I was hoping.
We also got the official announcement of the new Ratchet and Clank game to tie into next year's movie. Now, I think this game had been mentioned previously, but we actually saw some gameplay to go along with it. Honestly, the game looks really good on PS4.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited to check that out. And then the movie is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But we know that that's coming in 2016. The big bomb that Sony dropped that I don't think anyone saw coming was Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced.
Yep.
So we got a trailer that showed, oh man, was it I'm going to make myself sound Midgar, yes. That showed Midgar, and then it followed up on the back of Cloud Strife, and then it ended just saying Remake. So we don't even have a date for this game yet.
Yeah.
Did you have some thoughts on that?
I mean, it's going to be huge. Everyone's been screaming for this game for years.
Yeah.
It's going to be a huge moneymaker for them. I think it's mainly speculation. I have heard there are going to be some story changes, so it's not going to be
I've been worried about
shot
that.
for shot. It's not going to be the same game that you played on the PS1. It's going to be the same. I think it's going to be the same time frame. It's going to be the same world. But as far as, what characters may or may not make it to the end of the game, that kind of stuff.
Oh, so story changes.
I'm thinking that may, I don't think they're going to put out the exact same game because they've been fighting this for a long time. They said they wanted a reason essentially to do it, not just to make money.
So this is going to be more than like a Twin Snake sort of situation where it's just the cutscenes are a little bit different. I mean, this is going to be.
I think so. Yeah. Again, this is purely speculation, but I think there's going to be at least one or two major changes.
Okay.
Coming to the
I'm sure Eris will still die. There's no way they could take that out, and people would lose it.
That's one of the first memes I saw. Was everyone telling new players, "Don't worry about leveling areas. Don't bother."
But they'll probably take out things like the weird, icky cross-dressing scene and stuff like that. I don't know. But also, I mean, it's definitely interesting that it's a remake, not a remaster. I'm curious if that means it's going to be PS4 and not...
I wonder, because if I'm not mistaken, the studio that's working on Final Fantasy games for Square right now, they're already working on Final Fantasy 15, and they're working on Kingdom Hearts 3. So unless this game comes out before those, which I think would be a huge... financially be great for them, creatively I think it'd be a mistake for them. Mm-hmm. So I guess this thing could still be 4 years off, 5 years off. So
well, depending on how much they do with it, they could just have this be its own, like... almost a new IP. It's not a new IP.
Right.
Like, push this as a new title that people should get really excited about, because, I mean, by now, I mean, most of the gaming market didn't play FF7. So
right.
They'll be playing it for the first time.
Yeah, so... Okay, we also got an announcement from... announcement from Guerrilla Games that they're working on Horizon Zero Dawn. Guerrilla Games, of course, famous for the Killzone franchise for the most part. Typically do first-person war shooter type games. I do like the look of Horizon Zero Dawn. It's notable that it's got a female protagonist option, which is great. It's also a third-person action shooter, and I think it actually kind of looks like Lost Planet 2 a little bit. So as far as like the way you can swarm around giant creatures and take them down as part of your gameplay. So I think that's kind of fun. But looking forward to seeing more from that game. Now let's go ahead and move on to the Nintendo highlights that we have here. I have a Wii U system, so I actually took note of most of the stuff that Nintendo was offering. We have Yoshi Woolly World. They showed that off, and then they also showed off the Amiibos. I think there were rumors that they were going to do plush figures for Yoshi Woolly World, but we actually saw them. So I thought it was pretty cool that we're getting something kind of different, I guess, Amiibo-wise.
No, I didn't see what they showed off at E3. Are they actually plush, or do they just look like
No, they're full on like plush dolls.
Huh.
Yeah.
How do they stand?
They don't. They flop around like a plush doll, but they've got the sensor inside the body of the figure, so you can use it on the tablet. So we also got Amiibo announced for Skylanders, Animal Crossing, and Smash Brothers. Now, for Skylanders, we saw DK, or Donkey Kong, and Magma Bowser. And now what's interesting about Skylanders and Amiibo is that the story goes Activision 4 years ago now, or whenever it was, actually went to Nintendo and said, hey, we've got this idea for a game that uses toys. It's going to be kind of directed towards a younger audience, and we know that your console appeals to younger audiences. We'd like to make this a console exclusive, and we think it'll be a really great partnership for us. Nintendo said no to that way back when, so Skylanders came out on every platform, and guess what? It was a huge holiday hit. So I think it's funny now that Nintendo's probably gone to Activision at this point to see how they could get in on the Skylanders thing that they originally turned down.
I think Nintendo is needing the help right now.
Yeah, exactly.
They really need the sales, yeah.
So, but it is pretty cool. I think that DK and Bowser are going to be in that. There may end up being more characters. Those are the only ones they showed off. And we also saw that we're getting Amiibo for Animal Crossing. So they've got cute little like leaf patterns underneath the figures, and I'm not really sure how those are going to work in the game. And then we have, of course, Amiibo for Smash Brothers that were announced. They announced that Lucas was going to get a figure made and Mewtwo was going to get a figure made. And we'll jump to the next point for Smash Brothers. Street Fighter's Ryu has been announced as a playable character for Smash Brothers.
He's out.
Yes, and he's out already. Not only did they show the video and say he's coming and show you how to play them, but then the video ended saying, go get him now. Which I just about lost my mind.
Now, did I hear, so I haven't played him yet. I have heard that it's essentially the same Street Fighter 2 combos still work.
Yes, you can do traditional Smash Brothers inputs, or you can do Street Fighter inputs. If you do the Street Fighter inputs, you actually get a damage buff or a damage boost because you're using
the whole attack is a little bit different.
So I can finally play Smash Brothers is what you guys are telling me.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a character that
So, and we'll probably be playing that after this show is over because the night I heard that, I went home and I downloaded the character and already tried out a couple of matches with him. So pretty exciting stuff there. So I was really, really happy to see that announced, and I believe it was now I'm forgetting the name of the guy, Sakurai, who said that there's going to be an Amiibo in production for Ryu for Smash Brothers.
Very good.
So pretty exciting stuff there. So moving on then. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say they also showed the Ken trophy.
Oh, they did. Yes, they announced that there's a Ken trophy.
And I mean, maybe I'm expecting too much, but it seems like they could just do a little bit of a model swap and have Ken in the game
the model is fully in the game. The moveset could be exactly the same. I mean, I got the model just for buying the Ryu playable character, or the Ken trophy. So yeah, I mean, you think with characters like Wario that has a completely different costume set when you switch to between WarioWare Wario and regular Wario, that it wouldn't be too hard for them to do the same thing for Ryu. So
yeah, I'm sure I'm assuming he's been selling well, I'm sure more will come.
Yeah, so pretty exciting stuff there though. And And then, of course, we got an announcement of Mario Tennis Ultra Smash for Wii U. That'll be coming holiday 2015. No Amiibo figures announced or anything like that for the game, but I'm sure this is going to have them. Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival. So there you go. The Animal Crossing game, and we saw the Amiibos for that game. That comes out holiday 2015 as well. We had Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes announced for 3DS. That's coming fall this year. Interestingly, this is not a traditional Zelda game. It is more like the Four Swords Adventure. It's a co-op game. Wow. And it seems like each different Link is going to have the ability to customize the way their character is dressed. So I find that kind of interesting too. Then, of course, we had Metroid Prime Federation Force announced for 3DS. It's coming in 2016. It's going to be another co-op game, so we're seeing more co-op stuff with 3DS games. And then Star Fox Zero, and I didn't get a lot of news on this, but it appears to be a traditional style Star Fox game coming out for the Wii U.
About time.
Yeah, right? So we didn't even get anything during the Wii phase, right? I think we got some 3DS Star Fox games. But...
Just rail shooters in general. I mean, it's just not a genre you see a lot of anymore.
Well, that's true.
I mean, it's like I remember Space Harrier back in the Genesis. Like, it was one of my favorite games. Just that genre is so you just don't see it anymore, and it's really fun.
I mean, I will say that there were some fun rail shooters on Wii that allowed you to use the Wiimote as a light gun, and I did enjoy those. We got like House of the Dead Overkill and House of the Dead 1 and 2 came out, but we didn't
Dead Space rail shooter too.
Oh yeah, there was a Dead Space rail shooter that was pretty good. Yeah, we didn't get any sort of the ship just on a target, so it'll be exciting to see this too. And I guess we'll see if they have any sort of planetary missions where you run around as the characters this time, or if they just stick straight to the ships. So. We also have a little bit of bonus round. This stuff isn't really specific to one console or another. I guess the Street Fighter announcement I mentioned will be. But Kingdom Hearts 3 had a trailer that was shown off. And in the trailer, you could actually see Hercules was featured, the film property, and Tangled. So I'm personally a huge fan of Hercules, and I love seeing that Hercules is going to have a major footprint in the next Disney or next Kingdom Hearts game. And then, of course, Tangled, for those of you who are fans of that Rapunzel Disney movie, there's a moment in the trailer where Sora, Goofy, and Donald are running over a hill, and they're definitely going to the tower from the Tangled movie. So we'll probably see her in the game too.
We also saw in, I guess, the story trailer, I don't know if there were other trailers, Riku and Sora talking to each other, like playing some sort of game.
Was that Riku and Sora?
I think
I almost thought it was. Oh, you guys have played Kingdom Hearts. Who's the silver-haired guy?
Oh, that's what I meant.
Riku's. Okay, so Riku's the silver-haired guy, but the blue-haired guy was not Sora.
Oh, it wasn't.
And interestingly, I watched that trailer 3 or 4 times. Again, I'm a Hercules nut. I am certain at this point that Matthew Broderick is voicing the blue-haired guy in that trailer. If you watch the trailer, guys, listen to the voice of the blue-haired guy. That's got to be Matthew Broderick, because every time I heard him talk, I was like, man, I know that voice really well. And my kid loves The Lion King, so I've been hearing a lot of Matthew Broderick. So he plays Adult Simba, if you don't know that movie. So I looked up IMDb. I was searching on the web. Does anybody know if he's in the game? I can't find anybody confirming it, but watch the trailer again, and we can watch it after this show. I'm pretty sure Matthew Broderick's playing that blue-haired guy.
Interesting.
So, which is a pretty big casting announcement, I thought. You know, that hasn't come out yet. So. All right, so moving on, then we had another announcement from Street Fighter V. Birdie and Chun-Li were confirmed for the fighter. So both of these characters are not new to Street Fighter. I think Chun-Li's been in a few more games than Birdie has. Birdie's typically hung out in the Alpha series. But it's pretty cool to see both of these guys back in the game. I'm a little stickler for unnecessary costume changes, and personally for me, Chun-Li, I'm not a fan of that leg belt. It breaks the symmetry of her outfit, and it's distracting to me every time I see her like doing a spiral arrow or anything like that. But what do you guys think of the addition? Because we're all fighting.
Cammy, Chun-Li?
Cammy.
Oh,
what am I saying?
It says Chun-Li. It's just.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, Cammy. Cammy was
sense.
announced at E3. Sorry. So what do you guys think? We're all fighting game players here. Birdie and Cammy. Are you excited for that, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. Although you mentioned a minute ago that neither of these characters are new. I don't think have they announced any new characters for 5? I don't think they have.
Not yet. I think right now the roster stands Charlie, who seems to be like Cyber Charlie or some sort of Dark Charlie. We've got Bison, we've got Ryu, Chun-Li, Cammy, and Birdie. So that's all 6 that have been announced so far.
Yeah.
And Jeff, what do you think of these characters?
I mean, I kind of figured we were going to see Cammy. I mean, she's not necessarily a main character, but she's a mainstay. Yeah. Birdie's nice, and I like they're kind of giving a nod to the alphas. I mean,
and we actually,
it's kind of a nice touch.
It's worth noting too that by the end of Street Fighter 4's run, we got quite a few alpha characters in the game. I mean,
they don't do alpha anymore, so I guess that's kind of their trade-off. They're just throwing them all into one game now.
Yeah. So probably means we're guessing here, I guess, but could mean that we'll see Hugo again. Could mean that we'll see Poison. I mean, all those characters that were introduced late in the game on the first one. So. All right, and then finally, this is what I thought was one of the more strange announcements at E3. The creator of Shenmue, and I don't have his name here, I'm sorry to say, came out during this PlayStation press conference and announced that he'd like to do Shenmue 3, and he announced a Kickstarter at the press conference. And he said he had a goal. and it was, I think, within 9 hours or within 24 hours at least, that the main goal for the game was hit, and now they're going for stretch goals, and there's still like 6 weeks on this Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So Shenmue 3 is definitely happening at this point. Now we're just trying to see how fancy we can make it, how many platforms we can get it on. Sure. So I didn't really play Shenmue 1 or 2. I didn't have a lot of Sega consoles growing up. I know you did.
I did.
So did you play Shenmue 1 and 2?
If I remember correctly, 2 was on the Dreamcast. Right?
Yeah.
I had it. I was a little young for it. I didn't quite have the patience for it at the time.
Okay.
I mean, that game was essentially the reason to have it. I mean, that and Power Stone were basically your reason to have a Dreamcast. So I don't really know that they needed to kickstart it to make it happen. I mean, I think it would have sold either way. I don't know if maybe it was just him trying to do some convincing if no one wanted to pick it up. So he's like, fine, I'm going to... Basically like the Serenity movie.
It's like he may have had to kickstart it just because nobody else wanted to make it happen.
Yeah, so, and I think he's actually going to come out better for it long term. I think he's going to make a lot of money on this. So... yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be good. Like I said, another thing you really don't see a lot of anymore, kind of those adventure style games, a little less action. I mean, it still has some action, but...
Right. So, and it definitely is something story-wise to look forward to.
Sure.
Yeah. So... All right. Well, Greg, why don't you go ahead and tell us then? We had some Disney Infinity news come out from E3.
So there was a lot of Disney Infinity stuff at E3, but I'm just going to gloss over the more important points and then direct you to my website. Boba Fett got announced, and I don't know if that was actually at E3, but
it was at the PlayStation press conference.
Okay.
In fact, John Vignocchi was on stage to announce
that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be PS4 exclusive, kind of like Hulk for the first 30 days. They've also, it wasn't announced at E3, but like a week or two before they announced the Rebels characters. And at E3, clarification was given on Rebels characters that many of them will be retailer exclusives. In fact, all of them will be retailer exclusives. So we're going to have Sabine Wren at Target. Mulan is not Rebels, but she's going to be at Best Buy. Zeb at GameStop. Kanan at Walmart. Ezra at Toys R Us. And also, for some reason, Fear from Inside Out is Amazon exclusive. I have no idea why.
One of the Inside Out characters?
One of the Inside Out characters. I don't know
Okay.
why. But yeah, and then I for some reason have Mulan in with those. But yeah, Mulan is also going to be Best Buy exclusive. So yeah, lots of exclusives to go around this time. I mean, certainly more than the previous game. And I mean, were there any retailer exclusive figures actually in the previous game?
Not for Disney Infinity, but it's worth noting that Smash Brothers, by the end of its figure run, had a ton of retailer exclusives. Like Shulk was only at GameStop.
Interesting.
And I'm forgetting, there was characters that were exclusive to Amazon. I don't remember how it broke down because I stopped, honestly, worrying about all the different Smash Brothers figures. There's so many of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, by the third and fourth wave, I think there are retailer exclusives for all of them.
So the
Rosalina was Target exclusive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the sad thing about a lot of this is that it probably means there's not going to be a Rebels pack where you can just get them all, because I'm sure the retailers would lose it over that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was also a whole bunch of new footage from Inside Out. You can go on my website and see the videos. There's gameplay for each and every character, all their specific stuff, their personal buffs, all that kind of stuff. As well as more. So yeah, lots of Disney Infinity news. I couldn't possibly cover it all right now. So
okay, and your website, DisneyInfinityCodes.com, even has video from the floor of E3, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So you had somebody there from the website.
Yeah, they have. My coworker has a friend who's just a great name, Art Vega, who went out there and took video on the floor. You got to see the power disc curtain, like this bead curtain they made out of power discs. There's a lot of really cool stuff in that video. So
that's cool. And did you
I was going to say, one thing with the Rebels, if there were to be a set, one notable character that's missing from that is Hera, the pilot. Like I said, she's kind of in charge of the whole crew. And then their astromech droid is nowhere to be found. And he's a fairly major character in the show. He actually got an episode dedicated to him, which is kind of rare for the comic relief in the show. So if there were, I'm not saying I don't know there's going to be, but if there were to be a set, I think it would be those two. Okay. Because they are, I mean, they're both the ones tied to the ship. So maybe doing something with the Ghost.
Do we know then, are 3PO and R2-D2 mission givers in Disney Infinity, or do we know?
We don't know yet.
Okay. So, all right. Well, that's
certainly there hasn't been a figure or anything announced for them yet.
So, I guess that's kind of interesting to point out then. I want to mention that Zeb's the one that's based off the like Chewbacca concept art, right?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, so I just find it interesting that the sort of hulking cool character is the one that's GameStop exclusive. It kind of sounds like that makes sense for that one.
Ezra being Toys R Us is perfect. I think that's going to be probably the hard to find one that's going to be very sought after. I mean, especially any kid who watches the show. I mean,
and he's the main guy, right?
Yeah, he's the main guy. He's got his blaster lightsaber combo. I mean, he's
so big get for Toys R Us on that one.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big money maker.
I gotta wonder how that goes down. If they just bid over them, or if
I would think so.
Well, it's probably, and I could be wrong, but the shows like Toy Fair. I mean, the whole reason that those toy companies are there is to show off their wares for the year and basically take bids on what stores want to get them, or if they're looking for exclusives, they talk to each retailer and say, all right, so here's what we want, here's the special package, who wants it most, and what kind of distribution deal can we work out? So they probably had something similar to that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes the most sense, him being with Toys R Us. I mean, because he is essentially the kid of the group.
Yeah, okay.
So that kind of works.
Well, lots of news there. Then, of course, we still have next to no news on the Marvel stuff, and Comic-Con is just a couple weeks away at this point.
They did show, this isn't new, but they did show figures of Ultron and Hulkbuster.
Oh, they did do that.
We don't have any other new info about Marvel playsets or anything like that, but yeah, they did actually show off those figures for the first time.
Okay, well, I feel
and
pretty...
there's pictures of those on my site.
Okay, so I feel pretty confident, though, that story content, if there is going to be any for these guys, probably get that at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
So.
Also, we have 7 playsets confirmed so far, so...
Oh, man.
Even more credence to that Best Buy leak a while ago.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, guys, so with all the gaming news out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the featured sort of attraction of this week's show.
The reason all this stuff is here.
Yes, we want to talk about Beast Wars. Since we have no new Geek television coming out this week, we want to talk about, I think, what I think, and maybe what you guys think too, is one of the best animated series. Certainly of our childhood.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so if you guys aren't familiar with Beast Wars, it is a show that ran from September of 1996 to March of 1999. It was a show... based around the Transformers property, the robots that turn into cars. Only this show, they turned into animals. It was a show that was actually set in the same universe or same continuity as the original 1984's Transformers animated series, which was really great if you're a fan of the original cartoons watching the show, the Easter eggs you got all throughout. And it was followed up by Beast Machines, which is sort of a sequel series. Now, Beast Wars was notable because it won a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Animation. And honestly, I think the show frankly deserved it. Sure. Everything Mainframe that was doing really was kind of groundbreaking. Mainframe Entertainment's the same guys who brought us Reboot a few years earlier before Beast Wars. Sadly, as the years have progressed, Mainframe is a shell of what it used to be. Greg and I looked it up one time, and they pretty much do direct-to-DVD Barbie CG animated films anymore, and they really just aren't the studio they used to be, which is kind of sad. But back here in the 90s, man, they were firing on all cylinders. Oh, yeah. They were telling great stories. They had great characters, and we'd like to talk about some of that today. So let's go ahead and then I guess we'll talk about in general what Beast Wars was about. And feel free to chime in, guys, but I thought Beast Wars was really just kind of a show about a group of heroes that were displaced from their home. They were chasing thieves, basically, who stole a really important artifact on the planet Cybertron, and they got stuck on a planet back in time, and they didn't really know where they were. As the show progressed, we figure out they're on the planet Earth, and they're on the same planet where Optimus Prime and his Transformers crash landed way back in the prehistoric era, but the Beast Wars landed after they crashed, but before they woke up in the 1980s. So it was kind of an interesting twist.
You didn't learn the original Transformers connection. I mean, they talked about Unicron and Cybertron and all that stuff.
And Starscream even had an appearance.
But you didn't really learn that there was a hard connection until we actually saw the Ark and Optimus and all that stuff later, right?
Right.
I mean, so I'm curious, did they know they were going to do that the whole time, or was that something they came up with as the show progressed?
I could be wrong on the story a little bit here, but if you watch the special features that are at least on the Season 1 Rhino animation DVDs, Larry DiTillo, Bob Forward, they all talk about how they were basically given free license to do whatever they want. And they came into the project, having done Reboot, not really knowing anything about the Transformers. They knew that the cartoon existed, but they kind of started creating the show, telling their own story. And they left the planet intentionally with 10 moons so they could decide that it could be Earth if they wanted it to be, and figure out what they were going to do with that later. But then as they started watching the original cartoons, they got the inspiration to kind of sprinkle in G1 references. And by the time they got into Season 2, they just went full on into it because the fans were digging the references, and they just kind of decided, okay, this is definitely a sequel series. Mm-hmm. So I think they actually made the transition pretty well and pretty unnoticeable, honestly. It looks like it could have been planned from the entire time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I never would have known as a kid that wasn't where the series was going, so yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, Jeff, we'll start with you. Kind of talk about why you think Transformers Beast Wars is one of the best Transformers iterations that we've seen.
I mean, honestly, this has probably been my primary source of Transformers up until the new movies. Because when I was a kid, I had some of the car ones, but this was I was about the right age for it when this came out.
Yes.
This was essentially my introduction to Transformers, and it's just always kind of stuck with me throughout the years. I mean, like you said, the stories were great. I love all the characters. Going into the new movies, I guess it was the second one where where Megatron ends up doesn't he end up as a dinosaur at some point? Second or third one? I thought one of the new ones they kind of hinted at it.
Well, I haven't seen Transformers 4 yet. What was the name of that one?
It was whatever the most recent one was, I think. They hint at it at the very end. They kind of give you a quick glimpse.
Okay, so that would make sense then for the fourth one.
But yeah, but I mean, other than that, I mean, like I said, this is, essentially everyone else had truck Transformers, that kind of stuff. This was my Transformers. So
sure. And I do like, you commented on the new movies, the Michael Bay films. I enjoyed seeing Scorponok, even though it wasn't the Scorponok we were used to, appearing in the first movie, so I thought that was pretty great. So, Greg, why do you think Transformers has kind of stood the test of time, and why?
I think one of the most important things about the show, and this is something I kind of would come back to in a second, is the way that they push the boundaries on animation. Certainly, at the time, it was one of the only fully 3D animated shows at the time. And I'm sure it just cost a fortune to do, because at the first season we had, 24 episodes? Yep. And then they seemed to decide to scale that back half as much in season 2 and 3.
But I think the show was better for it, too.
It was, yeah. And that's the other thing that I think is one of the reasons that the show is often considered so good, is that they were not afraid to do serious plot lines.
Right.
They didn't feel the need to be only a kid's show, and because of that, you had that kind of thing where even an adult can enjoy it, but kids will enjoy it too.
We're in a lot of kid shows that would kill off characters.
Yeah,
that just didn't happen then.
And just like Jeff was saying, the show was timed pretty perfectly for me to come into it as a kid. It was my first Transformers series. Also, I have no real attachment to cars or vehicles or anything like that. Whereas, especially at the time, I was super into like cheetahs and rhinos and lions. Yeah. So yeah, it definitely appealed to me from that perspective.
Right.
And I think it has aged well, at least as far as the stories and even to some extent the animation.
Sure. Well, I definitely think, even though it shows its age, the animation looks really great. Mm-hmm. And one thing I think that's great about this show and why I can still watch it today is we were very much kids. In our house, our parents weren't huge into cartoons. They thought they were for children. They wouldn't even give them the time of day. So we would watch a lot of adult programming, whether it be Star Trek, whether it be any sort of like legal drama that our parents were watching. Nick at Night was different. That was the fun stuff for us, right?
Yeah, but
true. We were exposed to a lot of non-animation because our parents just wouldn't watch it. So when we saw a show like Beast Wars, it was an animated show, but it also had the level of storytelling and the level of depth that we saw with the shows that we were kind of forced to watch with our parents. Mm-hmm. So I think in that sense, it was something that we were able to appreciate more. And I think shows like this, shows like Batman the Animated Series, X-Men the Animated Series, I think are in kind of a higher tier or a higher pantheon than other animated series that were out at the time, like Bobby's World, which was fun, but just didn't have the same sort of richness to it. So I think that's part of the reason, for me at least, why it stood the stand of time, or whatever the duration is. It offered more. It offered something to come back to, and characters I think that you could really get behind and really get to know.
Bobby's World is a good comparison because it's another show that, they had moral lessons. They did sort of serious stuff, but it was always kid-focused.
Right.
As an adult, you probably wouldn't draw that much out of Bobby's World, whereas you could watch Transformers now, and there's still a lot of those, or Beast Wars now, and there's still a lot of those themes that you would even be impressed by. Mm-hmm.
So it's a show that's, I think, really special in that sense. So it was more like you said, it was more than just a show aimed at children, mm-hmm. So well then let's since we're talking about Beast Wars, let's go ahead and talk about some of our favorites with this show. And on that, not really favorites, but I guess let's talk about our first exposure to it. Jeff, what is your earliest memory of Beast Wars?
My earliest memory of Beast Wars is actually sitting right in front of us.
Okay.
Cheetor right there. That was my brother he must have been his second year in college, so I would have been 7 maybe. Okay. I remember walking around Toys R Us and saw Cheetor and just got so excited because it was a cheetah transformer, and I was just obsessed with cheetahs for some reason. So he bought it for me, and that was my first like real action figure. I had toys and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was my first, I guess, I don't want to say grown up action figure, but
right, yeah, right.
But yeah, it was between that and watching the show. That was 20 years later, he's still hanging out. So.
Right, yeah. So, no, that's awesome. Yeah. So, my first exposure to the show, or my earliest memory I can think of, I was hanging out at a store that a friend of mine, their dad owned. And we were basically just waiting for him to get off of work so I could go spend the night over at his house. And while we were in the back room, the little break room, he had a black and white TV that had a lot of snow on it, but we were still able to watch Fox's afternoon cartoon programming. And a commercial came on that showed a bat flying over water, and an alligator jumped out and tried to snap at it. And it was like the first commercial for the Beast Wars toy line, and we lost our minds. I remember we were both saying whoa, when we were looking at this thing, because these animals were turning into robots. And I had Transformers toys before. Our grandma liked to go to swap meets a lot and would just get random toys for us. So we had some Transformers toys like a Soundwave and stuff, but we never really gotten into the cartoon at this point. So I was familiar with Transformers, but I'd never seen transforming animals. I just thought that was really, really cool. And they had like the little water squirter guns in the commercial too, which is kind of fun. So, but that was my first experience, just seeing these really cool, like the bat that turned out to be the first version of Optimus Primal, and the alligator that turned out to be the first version of Megatron pre-show when they hadn't decided on the ape and the Transformers Rex yet. So that's my first memory though.
Absolutely. Like I don't remember because it was so long ago whether the toys or the show were first for me.
Okay.
But in that first wave of figures, it's definitely really impressive how tight they were. I want to say like Armadillo, my first figure. You had basically a lever that you could move, and the whole thing would just transform. But it made sense. Like it was in an armadillo form, and it looked like an armadillo. Then you transformed it into a robot, and it looked like a robot. And then the show came on, and you saw these people on the show, and you would go home and you would get the toy, and it'd be just like on the show.
Yeah.
Like the look was so similar. I think one of the brilliant things about the show, and also one of my earliest memories, is the fact that there was such consistency between what you had at home and what you saw on the screen.
Yes.
And I definitely think that's a strong plus for the show.
And it's worth noting, too, I think during the first season of the show and the first line of toys, the likeness was probably a little bit rougher than it was come season 2. It's almost like with season 2, they knew exactly what their limitations were as a creative medium in computer animated television, and they made sure toys like this Tarantulas here, spot on recreation of the way he looked on the show.
And this figure is 15 years old or so.
20 years old at this point. So yeah, I mean, they really just kind of knew what they could do, and they made the most out of it. So so I mean, I think those great memories, or first memories, are all really, really great. I mean, and it sounds like we were all kind of exposed first to the toy, and then we saw the show. So the toy certainly got us into the show. Maybe not the show into the toys. Kind of like probably the showrunners wanted it to happen that way. But so let's go ahead and talk about then. We had a great cast of characters on this show. Now the good guys, the Autobots on this show, were called the Maximals. They were descendants of the Autobots, and the villains were called the Predacons, descendants of Decepticons. So I guess there was a lot of characters on the show, and who do you think, Greg, we'll start with you. Who do you think your favorite Maximal on the show was?
I hope I don't steal somebody's, but I'm going to go with Dinobot. Okay. Because I liked the aspect of his character. First episode, he switches sides. And then the rest of the show, really, until mid-season 2, spoilers, he's still not sure about these guys. And while he comes to respect them and even consider himself a Maximal, he still fundamentally, philosophically, has strong differences with the Maximals, to the point where he even considers helping the Predacons at times, but understands that they're kind of their own brand of evil. I mean, definitely more of an interesting character than you're used to getting on a kid's show, which is good.
Sure. And as a kid, too, we grew up with Star Trek in the house all the time. To me, Dinobot was sort of the Worf character of the show. He was always talking about honor, always practicing his fighting techniques. So I enjoyed that about the character, too. Yeah. My favorite Maximal on the show is actually Tigatron. I thought Tigatron, for being a tiger, he's very much a lone wolf. And from the moment he joins the show, he says, I'm here if you guys need me, but I really just kind of want to run my own path. He was very much in tune with like the nature of the planet. He had a best friend that was actually just a regular animal, but he was also really good at stealth. I mean, not Rat Trap level stealth, but there were a few episodes where he was able to get behind enemy lines because they just weren't expecting him. And he was a very soft-spoken character. He's almost like the Native American character of the show, but I really enjoyed sort of the different flavor the episode got when Tigatron would show up, because he wasn't in every episode once he joined.
And I remember being terribly sad when Tigatron and Airazor died, and it's just like, they're gone?
Right.
They're actually gone?
And then they bring him back in season 3, and it's just not the same. He's a totally different guy. So, but yeah, Tigatron's definitely my favorite Maximal. Jeff?
So at the time, definitely with Cheetor. I mean, he was essentially like the Bumblebee equivalent. Always real high energy, the fact that for some reason when I was a kid, I was really into Cheetos. I have no idea why. Going back and rewatching it when I was older, I've really been liking Rhinox.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's because at the time I never really got it, but he was a lot more of a BA character than I gave him credit for when I was little. And especially a couple episodes where he pulls out his shin guns, he's doing work.
Yeah.
And that never really connected when I was younger, but watching him now, I'm noticing it a lot more.
I mean, he's almost like the silent hero. I mean, he seems to always have the answer.
Yeah.
But he's certainly the toughest guy. He doesn't want to lead, but if the situation calls for it, he will.
And he can do it. That's the thing. I mean, he may not want to, but he has the ability. It's not like he's just kind of guessing his way through it.
Yeah, and he's like very blue collar, I would say, of the guys on the cast.
Yeah.
So, well, it's all great picks, guys. Well, let's go ahead and talk then about the villain side of things. Jeff, we'll start with you. And what's your favorite Predacon on the show?
It's actually kind of counter to Greg's point. It was actually Dinobot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, preference that. When Rhinox went straight Predacon, that was just a great episode. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I mean, he's kind of for the same reasons, though. I mean, he doesn't really fit in with either side. Like, he's definitely more of a warrior than the Maximals, but he's not just straight evil like the Megatron philosophy wants to be. So he is more kind of an in-between, but yeah, I mean, especially like I said, when he comes back later and he is just evil.
So we're talking like Transmetal 2 down about season 3.
Exactly,
You're still
yeah.
into that,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and I remember loving that figure, just as an aside.
Oh, yeah. It's great. Yeah. So good.
Well, I'm hoping I'm not stealing Greg's, but my favorite Predacon has to be Tarantulas. He's always scheming. He's always got something going on. I think in the first season of the show, they didn't really know quite what they wanted to do with him. He was definitely part of the group of villains. But as the first season progressed and Black Arachnia joined the show, and Megatron needed a foil who wasn't just the villain or the heroes, I really liked kind of all the scheming that Tarantulas did. And I think he had some of the more interesting moments on the show. I mean, the reason we have Inferno, kind of sort of the reason we have Inferno on the show is because of Tarantulas' meddling. The reason that Optimus Primal almost died in the season 1 cliffhanger is because of Tarantulas. Again, his meddling. He's always there, always scheming. He's a really creepy character, and I definitely visually I think he got a very good improvement from season 1 to season 2. So I just think he's a great Predacon character. Greg?
Yeah, it's definitely Tarantulas, and I think you've highlighted a few of the good reasons. Basically, with Megatron, you kind of always knew what he was going to do. He was like a constant. He was the evil, and then Optimus was the good. Tarantulas, you never knew what he was going to do. Like, he was in the shadows somewhere, and he could just show up, and suddenly now the situation was completely different. He was always looking out for his own, and even though he probably should have been more afraid of Megatron than he was not afraid of Megatron
He's
at
been
all.
scheming against him a couple episodes, right? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, they had a character in season 1 named Pterosaur who was kind of supposed to be, I think, the stand-in for Starscream. He was a flying guy. He was always saying, I'm going to be leader of the Predacons, and he was just kind of a buffoon. Yeah. I think Tarantulas out Starscreamed Starscream, with like the later half of season 1 and with season 2. I mean, he really just kind of became his own character, I think. And also, I forgot.
Yeah, he's definitely on his own side.
Yeah, exactly. And I completely forgot until you were talking about him. I think it turned out that he was an agent of the Predacon Secret Police Force.
Well,
the Paxton Petronia, I think is what they were called. Yeah, and Ravage kind of reveals that at the end. He was on a mission from Tripredacus.
Yep.
So again, just kind of showing that his colors weren't really on Megatron's side.
And I can't remember exactly how it goes down, but he ends up, along with a lot of other people in the finale, dying. Do you remember what it was that actually gets him? I feel like it is his hubris in the end.
I think so too. Man, I can't believe I don't remember.
He's looking out for his own and then ends up dying because of it.
I think it is something along those lines, So, then let's go ahead and talk about our favorite individual episodes from each season. So, I think there were roughly 50 episodes, maybe 54 episodes of Beast Wars. So we'll go ahead and talk season by season. If you've got an episode per season, great. If not, just tell us what your favorite episode is, guys. But let's start. I'll start by saying my favorite episode from season 1 is Fallen Comrades. Fallen Comrades is the episode where Tigertron first gets introduced. And what I really enjoy about the episode is the feel of the chase between the Autobots and the Maximals. It's the first time we've had a protoform, or not a protoform, but a stasis pod of a Maximal. So I guess I should say, in the pilot of this show, the Axelon, the ship that the Maximals are on, before they crash land on this planet they don't realize is Earth, they launch all of their comrades who aren't necessary to keep the ship flying into space so that they can try to rescue them once they fix the ship and get back up into space. Big mistake. So they basically end up with 20 different robots off in space. And
just bolstering the Predacons' forces by the end.
Basically, so and each stasis pod was basically set to crash land to the planet at a certain point. So this is this first protoform that lands on the planet. There's a race to get to him. I think it's just a really fun episode. We get a lot of great character moments from all the characters, but we also get to meet Tigertron for the first time, and we get that sense of this guy's going to be his own man. Once once they finally figure out what the Transformers that crashed and what form they've chosen, he aligns himself with the Autobots, or with the Maximals, and then he actually says, "This was great, guys. I'm glad to see that we all have the same philosophy, but I'm going my own way." And it was just kind of, I think, a really cool way to introduce this character. So, Jeff, what would you say your favorite season 1 is?
It's definitely the Trigger
Okay.
Floating Island episode. It's 2-parter, another Tigertron episode. This is probably my favorite of the series.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just absolutely love it. So it's essentially a floating island shows up, and it's just a paradise for them all to live on. The only kind of caveat to that is no weapons. You pull out your weapons, you shoot. There's a giant laser turret essentially that just owns you.
Right.
And it's got a good message that I think kind of still holds up. You know, like Tigertron says it at the end. You know, when it's kind of a long drawn out thing, but eventually, you know, they lose access to the island and it ends up blowing up, I think. But they were essentially given a paradise, and the only rule was they couldn't fight, and they couldn't tear themselves away from this war long enough to live in this paradise. It was perfect. And I mean, even 20 years later, that still kind of holds up.
Yo, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Probably even more so now.
Right.
Yeah.
And Tigertron's definitely, he's the one who points it out to him, and he says, "You guys are basically fools."
Exactly, even the Maximals can't stop fighting long enough to enjoy it. So.
Yep. So, what's your favorite episode from season 1?
So season 1's tough for me because there are so many episodes and it's so long ago since I've seen it. But I settled on Spider's Game because for a couple reasons. Firstly, especially as you were describing Fallen Comrades, I just remembered that sort of sense of giddy glee whenever it would be a stasis
pod's crashing. So we're
Yeah.
getting a new hero.
Yeah, exactly.
New toy!
Yeah. So you had that aspect going on. Then you also had the spiders working together, which they didn't do very often because Black Arachne didn't trust Tarantulas, and Tarantulas really didn't want a whole lot to do with her.
Yeah.
And then the introduction of Inferno, who is, while I don't know that he's necessarily one of the stronger written characters, I do think he's great comic relief and certainly very imposing, and becomes a major force throughout the rest of the series. So yeah, a lot of good stuff going on in that episode.
Okay, well, good pick. So we'll go ahead and move on to season 2 then. It should be noted, I think, that we all agreed before we started the show that our favorite episode of season 2 is Code of Hero.
I think the internet agrees.
The internet agrees. So if you're not familiar with Code of Hero, it's the episode basically where Dinobot dies. The indigenous, the Neanderthal people of the planet Earth are starting to rise up, and Megatron learns from the golden disc he sold in the pilot of the show that this is basically what creates humanity and what needs to be stopped if the Predacons are going to be able to take over this planet. Because eventually it's humans that help the Autobots that eventually stop the Decepticons way in the future. So anyway, Megatron says, "This is our stand. Let's get all the Predacons together. Let's attack this valley, and we're just going to end the human race." Dinobot figures out what's going on, and he feels honor-bound to protect these people who cannot defend themselves. And it is one of the most heroic, tear-jerking moments in the show as he's down to the last final breath and facing Megatron with a stick of all things. I mean, it's just... And he subverts expectations in the end by using the stick to create a simple tool and create a hammer that actually ends up influencing the evolution or the development of the people by the end of this episode. And it's a great moment. We get to see Dinobot Spark go off into space. He gets a jet salute at the end of the episode. The music is done really well, and I think all the action scenes are done really well. It's a really, really cool episode. Definitely one that you probably don't want to start with if you're just getting into Beast Wars, because there's so much history in the episode and so much you need to know going into it. But it's certainly one of those moments that I remember the first several times I watched it, even as a kid, I was like crying by the end of it. When Optimus has that moment, he says, "He lived a warrior and died a hero. Now he'll go join with the greatest heroes of Cybertron that Cybertron's ever known," as his sparks flipping up in the air.
Kind of Optimus even accepting him as a Maximal.
Exactly, finally. And they all salute him, and I mean... magical episode, to say the least. So with that praise out of the way, we have to pick another episode so we all have something individual to say about this show. I'm going to pick Tangled Web. I hope I haven't stolen anybody's episode. But Tangled Web, I think, is a cool episode for Season 2. It takes place, I think, after Coming of the Fuse Wars Part 1 and Part 2, and because it's our first real glimpse at who Quick Strike and Silverbolt are. We get the spiders doing their thing. Megatron commands Tarantulas and Black Arachne and Quick Strike to go build a satellite base. And Tarantulas finds an Energon cave and basically says, "This is going to be where my new lair is." And that's since my last one got destroyed. And we get to see Rat Trap and Silverbolt hunting down Tarantulas and Black Arachne, but we get a lot of great interactions between the characters, and we learn a lot about the new Fusor characters. And I think it's just a really fun episode. It's almost a one-off episode. So I think that's a good one to check out for Season 2. Let's go ahead, Jeff. What's your favorite season 2 episode?
Mine very similar to our group decision. It's Maximal No More. It's essentially the lead-in to Dinobot's redemption.
Yes.
I guess. So essentially, like I said, Dinobot's always really back and forth on whether he's Maximal, Predacon, something in between. He decides, I don't remember what spurs it, but he essentially decides he's going to go back to the Predacons and try and rejoin. Something he knows how to get them the golden disc.
That's it, yeah. So it's a complete shame to get that. Yeah.
So basically he goes over there, in the process he figures out that he's an error in his ways, but he kind of loses his honor. So the next couple episodes he's trying to find a way to essentially redeem himself, and then that kind of climaxes when he faces off with Megatron.
Yeah.
A few episodes later and ends up dying in the process. But
yep. So, but I think that episode too, I think has a great moment too, where Ratchet really thinks that Dinobot's actually switched sides. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that was a pretty good choice then. Greg, what's your favorite episode of season 2?
Well, I mean, it's already Code of the Hero, like we said, but I think honorable mention goes to Transmutate, which is just another episode that is just surprisingly relevant today. Oh, yeah. Especially with like trans issues being so much in the spotlight. You had this, as I recall, and I might be getting some of the facts wrong, so correct me if I do. You had a stasis pod that tried to create a transformer, but kind of failed.
Yeah, it was a damaged pod.
So you ended up with this sort of assemblage, like this not quite functioning transformer. And similar to the Trigger, it's like the Maximals want it, the Predacons want it, and it ends up dying as a result of their war over it.
Right.
And you got some stuff in there, as I recall, doesn't Rampage even kind of sympathize with
It's the most human we see Rampage in the entire series,
He kind of understands being this twisted creature.
Because he himself was created. Yeah, and kind of a twisted creature.
So there's a lot of good stuff going on in that episode, and another very emotional, very ahead of its time, forward thinking, and
it is also an episode too that kind of deals with the concept of euthanasia, because there's the discussion of, well, should we just kill this thing that's not perfect, this thing that can't transform and is useless in our war? So it's a very, very good episode. Also, just a little bit of fan trivia on that episode. The person who voices Transmutate is Sue Blue. She's the voice director of the original Transformers series, was the voice of RC on the original Transformers, and was the voice casting director for Beast Wars. And of course, she's done tons of other animated series. I think she was even involved with like the Jetsons and stuff. But so it's pretty cool that she voiced Transmutate on the show.
Very good.
So good pick for season 2, though. So let's go ahead and move on to season 3. Greg, we'll go ahead and start with you on this one. What's your favorite episode from season 3?
I'm going to go with Feral Scream Part 2. Because, and again, it's been so long since I remember, but I definitely remember being very interested in the change in Cheetor and him kind of being in the shadows and not being sure about himself, and finally coming forward and being like, man, I look good.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember
shiny blue.
The Transmetal 2 Cheetor figure being a personal favorite. That was such a great figure. Wish I still had that one.
And they kind of play the episode off too, like he just went through like robot puberty or something. He's got like a little beard at the end of it. Yeah. He thinks he's suddenly stunning to Black Arachne at the end of it, and she's like, "Get lost." So that's a pretty good episode. I'll say that my favorite of season 3 is Changing of the Guard. So again, it's another kind of fun sort of heist-like or chase-like episode. It's the first episode post Depth Charge. The first episode we get with Depth Charge, I believe. So this is the first time we've seen him kind of interacting with the Maximals a little bit. We see he's still very much sort of a selfish loner type character. But the idea behind the episode is that Sentinel, the AI that Rhinox created for the defensive AI that Rhinox created for the Axelon ship in the first season, the Maximals need something to help them defend themselves in the cave they've now set up shop in. So they send Rat Trap in this little submersible to get Sentinel back, and he's got to avoid Rampage, and then there's Inferno and Waspinator, and everybody's after this thing, and it's a sort of just chase game, a rat race almost, a back and forth, who's got Sentinel, and by the end of it, maybe the episode, I'll let you guys watch it for yourselves, but there's certainly a very interesting end to the episode. But I think it's just a fun journey the whole way through. So that's, I think, my favorite episode of Season 3. And I got to say, Season 3 for me was a season that wasn't as strong as the first two. But this is an episode I certainly enjoy watching every time I go back to Season 3.
I remember when I rewatched Season 3, and this was a couple of years ago now, but it just felt like it ended so quickly.
It did, yeah. So, and I don't know if that's because they didn't know that they were going to get a real Beast Wars for Season 4 or what. But yeah, it definitely seemed like they were building and it just kind of stopped. Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite episode of Season 3?
I'm on boat with Greg with the Feral Scream. I did go Part 1, though. So essentially another Dinobot Big fan.
Okay.
But yeah, just, with we were talking about earlier, kind of the shared spark with the Rampage. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. And again, getting him back was just, as a villain was great. So,
and I mean, he looked more badass when he came back than he did when he left. Yeah. So,
yeah, everything Transmetals, those were just amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
So, all right, well then, let's go ahead and talk about a fan question that we got. Ryan, who regularly writes into the show. And guys, if you want to write into the show, you can always tweet me at D21Beast, tweet Greg at
Yoshimitsu47.
And feel free to tweet Jeff. We may have him on again at
hints_Jeff.
All right, and make sure to tweet us with the hashtag Project Geek Week so we know to find this question for the show. But Ryan asked, which Optimus Primal do you prefer? Original, Transmetal, Optimal, or Beast Machines Optimus? Jeff, why don't you go ahead and answer first?
That's tough. I would probably go original just because I think season 1 was my favorite. So, and I kind of like, especially the episode where they're stuck in beast mode for quite a while, so they just kind of start reverting back. They're basically, they are the animals. That was cool. Kind of him swinging through the trees and just being less of a not necessarily a lead by example, but he's usually very talky, like convincing people. Hey, join me because of this. And this, he's just beating his chest and ready to wail on anyone that comes near him. That's just kind of a cool transition, I thought.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard for me to choose, but if I had to pick one, I really enjoy season 2 of the show. I'm probably going to go with Transmetal Optimus. I do think it's the weirder looking of all the Optimus. Well, Beast Machines is its own animal. Yeah. Yeah, Transmetal Optimus, I think. It's cool that he's got the airboard that he can fly with. I like the sort of shiny blue that he's got in the beast mode. I'm not a big fan of the face when he's in robot mode, but that's really my only complaint about it. Yeah. But definitely Transmetal Optimus for me.
I was just laughing when you were saying that because I was going to go with Optimal Optimus.
Oh, really?
We've got everything but Beast Machines represented. I think Optimal was definitely the robot mode, at least. Best look for Optimus. I think that it resolves the weird face issues that you had with Transmetal. I mean, it's a little bit of a shame that basically he doesn't really have a true beast form anymore. I mean, he's kind of got the ape mode, but it's still very robotic looking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's so much bigger than everyone else, so much more powerful.
He's like the size of a Generation 1 Transformer by that point, yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely my favorite. And I had the figure again, so that reinforces it.
Yep. One note I want to make about the Beast Machines Optimus. I'm really not a fan of a lot of the designs of Beast Machine, and especially I'm not a fan of the way they transform. One thing I loved about Transformers Beast Wars going from Season 1 to Season 2 is it was hard to capture some of the transformations in Season 1 just because limitations of the way they were able to animate things. They had to cheat a little bit with the way parts shifted around when they changed to robot mode. Yeah. But Season 2 and 3 nailed it. Everything transformed in toy form the way it needed to transform on the show. It was very much from screen to toy perfect. With Beast Machines, when the robots transformed, a ring of light would come up the body of the figure. So it didn't matter what they looked like in beast mode or robot mode because they could just do whatever they wanted on the show. And that was the toys unfortunately suffered, I think, from that because they were very complicated to transform at times. They didn't really look right in either mode totally. I think Cheetor is the best looking one of all of them. Yeah. And I just wasn't a fan of the way that they handled the design of the characters for Beast Machines. So for me, that was one that had no chance of winning this particular question. But thank you, Ryan, for sending that question in. And guys, again, if you want to send us a question, just tweet at us and make sure to use that hashtag Project Geek Week, and we'll read your question here on the show. So let's go ahead and talk about then beyond Beast Wars. We had Beast Machines, as we already mentioned. So with Season 3 ending, the Maximals went back to Cybertron, and the show took a very different turn. So I don't know that I like Beast Machines as much. You guys can feel free to talk about how you feel about that.
I honestly didn't watch it.
Okay.
I was strictly Beast Wars, so I'm going to have to go back and check that out.
Well, and I didn't totally watch Beast Machines, but what I recall that really turned me off to the show after the end of Beast Wars was that it just felt so much. I want to say darker, but not in a like plot way. Like visually, it was darker.
Oh, visually, absolutely.
And
there was definitely lower lighting. I mean, they were on Cybertron again, so it was very cold looking.
Yeah, and it just felt like the plot moved at a snail's pace. I just remember when we were watching the show that I had nothing to attach to. So I think we watched at least 3 or 4 episodes before I was just like, this is not doing it for me.
Right, and it was hard for me to watch as a kid, and at one point when Netflix first started streaming, Beast Machines was available for streaming, so I made sure to watch every episode. And I've got to say, I don't know that the climax or the resolution of the series is worth the build-up. Also, I think the animation actually went down from Season 3 of Beast Machines to or season 3 of Beast Wars to Beast Machine, so I was a little let down by that. And the cast just isn't as big, which one thing I really enjoyed about Beast Wars is that they had a bigger cast in season 1. You got the side characters like Black Arachnia, Air Razor, Tigertron that came in that made the cast bigger, and then they would kind of kill some guys off and bring some new people in and kind of change things up. I think by the end of Beast Machines, you had 5 or 6 actual heroes, and the Predacons, if you can call them that, the Viacons, might have only had 3 actual villains. So it was just a smaller cast. I don't think it worked as well. So that's kind of what you can expect post Beast Machines. Now, if you're a fan of the Beast Wars cartoon, once you watch it, there are other avenues to enjoy it. There were some video games that came out at the time that have not aged incredibly well. There was a video game for Beast Wars that was on PC and PlayStation 1. It was a third-person action game, and basically it featured the voice cast of the show, and it had some pretty cool original guitar music. We had Beast Wars Transmetals, which was originally a Blockbuster exclusive fighting game. It was kind of like Power Stone, an arena-style fighter that featured the Transmetal look of all the characters, and even with characters like Rhinox, who was in the game, they based his Transmetal model off the toy of Rhinox and not the way he looked in the show, but they got the entire voice cast, with the exception of Rhinox, back to actually be in the game, so that was pretty good. And then there's also comic books out there from IDW. They've done a lot of stuff with Beast Wars since then, so definitely some things you guys want to check out. So, but overall, I think Beast Wars was a really, really great show, and it's definitely something all 3 of us shared growing up as we were younger. So
I hope we see it again in some form at some point, although I'm sure it'll just be the case of where this isn't my Beast Wars. What are they doing?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So I haven't stayed. I mean, I've watched a lot of Transformers incarnations post Beast Wars. I still think this is the best one. I've seen Energon, Armada, Prime a little bit, but there was a show called Transformers Prime Beast Hunters, and I didn't follow that too much, but I know they had a lot of animal modes back on that, so that might be a place you can go for more recent animal Transformers shows. But Beast Wars really is something special, and while the animation does show its age a little bit, especially in season 1. By the end of the show, I think you'll be really satisfied with everything that you've seen, and I still think it holds up as great character development, great story arcs, really a show that you guys want to check out. Yep. And definitely I think it should be held up in the same regard as shows like Firefly or Star Trek, or really any of those science fiction shows, Stargate, that stand the test of time. I think it really belongs in that same sort of pantheon. So, well, do you guys have any other thoughts on Beast Wars before we move on?
Watch it.
Watch it.
Yep. All right. Watch it twice.
All right.
And find the toys when you can.
Yes. Yeah, right? Well then, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about our pick of the weeks. My pick of the week is actually going to be Ryu in Smash Brothers. I was super excited to see this character announced. I'm a huge Street Fighter fan myself. We're going to hit up Smash Brothers as soon as this show is over and probably do a lot of Ryu battling. So if you guys have a Wii U, if you got Smash Brothers, definitely pay to get this guy. Hopefully, if I guess it'd be Nintendo, but who made the game? It was actually Namco in partnership with Nintendo. Whoever the powers that be are that see the sales from these things, maybe they'll give us some more Street Fighter characters. I'd love to get a Marvel 3 style Chun-Li added to Smash Brothers. So
yeah, I'm sure Capcom's getting a good chunk of change off this.
I would think so. Yeah. So, but that's my pick of the week. So, Jeff, what's your pick of the week?
Mine's actually from E3 coverage. New Star Wars Battlefront trailer was amazing. It looks gorgeous. Just everything about it. It doesn't feel like a lighthearted Star Wars game. Like when you watch the trailer, it feels like Call of Duty essentially. I mean, you're in the front lines of a battle, and it really feels like what you can see in the trailer. So if you haven't seen it, go definitely watch it. It's gonna be great.
Does Battlefront, I know a lot of EA gamers maybe used to first person. Does Battlefront have the ability to switch back and forth between third person and first, or is it all third person?
The trailer does show primarily third person. At one point he was looking down the rails of a gun, so at least when you zoom in, sniper rifles, that kind of stuff. I don't know if you can...
So similar to Gears of War.
Yeah, I would assume you'll be able to go full first person. I mean, it was available in the old games, at least on the PC ports. So, I would think that would be in there.
Okay, cool. Well, good pick. Greg, what's your pick of the week?
I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole, but there was a lot of VR at E3.
Yeah.
And since I'm typically the guy who reps PC, I'll go ahead and say HTC Vive by Valve.
Okay.
Look forward to it. I could go into more details about the specific specs, but I don't need to.
Is there a killer app that you think people should check out?
No, I think Valve has the right idea for VR. I think they've done the homework, and I think ultimately they will have the best VR headset, but we'll see. Okay. I'm very excited to see where VR goes in the future. I hope that it's not just a fad that dies out. I think Valve is really hoping that too. Yeah. And I do worry a little bit with companies like the Microsofts and the Sonys that don't seem to have focused as much on it, that they're kind of bandwagoning and not really doing their own thing with it.
Sure.
So we'll have to see. Also, it's the whole Facebook Oculus thing. There's a whole lot of paths to go down there, but
Sure.
As we see more of the different headsets, we'll get a better idea of the capabilities of the different ones and which ones to keep your eyes on. I say keep your eye on the Vive.
Okay. All right, well, great pick of the week then. So, guys, that's our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again, Jeff, for sitting in with us as a special guest here.
Anytime.
So, we are going to be going off the air for a little bit. As you guys know from my previous Project Geek Weeks and my vlogs that I've done, I am moving states away from both of these guys. So, the format of this show is definitely going to be changing. We're not quite sure how we're working it out. We're probably looking at Skype conversations, maybe Google Hangouts, we'll record them. If we can, we'll try to keep all three of us together for shows moving forward. But we may have a couple of weeks where we don't have any shows at all. I'm moving probably early part, mid of July. So if we can get one more show together with at least Greg and myself, we'll try to do that. But it may be a couple of weeks before we get another Project Geek Week. So stick with us. We will be back. We may just be missing for a little while. And I'll still be doing toy reviews in the middle of that. Greg will still be updating DisneyInfinityCodes.com. Is there anything you want to plug?
Not really. Follow me on Twitter. Like I said, usually anything new Star Wars that comes out, I'll be sure to share that. So.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for watching this week, and we'll catch you next time.
Now let's make Hot Beast Wars stats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I should leave it recording.
Yep. Yeah, Ratchet.